The book that I decided to read for this month is, I think it's Villette, I think is how you say it. It's French, but it's Charlotte Bronte's, like, I think second most known book after Jane Eyre. I know that she has a couple other books out there other than just those two, but for the sake of my little, like, Bronte sister journey, I'm just kind of sticking to, like, the big four that people know. I've never read it before, and I looked up kind of a summary just to give myself an idea of, like, what I was getting myself into, and I'm about, like, I don't know, maybe a tenth of the way through right now. It's a big one, like, it's pretty thick, so I'm a little intimidated by that, but so far it's been pretty good. I think I'm getting to more of, like, the meat of the story. Like, she's actually in the village that the book is named after, and she's kind of, like, finding her way with, I think she eventually becomes a governess, but right now she's just working in this household, trying to find her way. I'm pretty sure she's originally, like, an orphan. The first, like, couple chapters took me a minute to kind of orient myself, so I'm not 100% sure. But so far, it's been a little slow, but I think we're kind of starting to get to the actual story narrative, and that is going to definitely help me out. This is actually my spring break, so I'm hoping that they'll help me get a little bit more into the book, and I'm hoping, like, you know, maybe this first week I get halfway through, and then it probably will take me a while to actually finish it since it is on the larger side, and it's not one that I'm familiar with like some of the others. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of like where I'm at with it. I want to do a brief little introduction. I'm not planning to take too long with this since I am not that deep into the book and I don't have that much prior knowledge to it like I did with Wuthering Heights. So that's just kind of where I'm at. I am 1/3 of the way through this book after I read at least one chapter today. So I'm thinking that this might be a good time to check in, go over a little bit of plot, go over first impressions a little bit. So as far as the plot goes, that's kind of a struggle, I'm not gonna lie. No editing me, so this is gonna happen a lot in this section, but we start the book out with Lucy Snow at her godmother's house, and her godmother's name is Mrs. Brighton, I believe. And in this house, there's two other kids, Graham and Polly. And remember those names, they do come back. And she winds up being kind of like a caretaker to an old woman. I think she's a caretaker, that's kind of the vibes I got. And then the woman dies after really not that long. So then Lucy's kind of like, okay, now I need to figure out what I'm gonna do and where I'm gonna go. So she decides to go to, I think, London. And then she's like crossing to France by some kind of boat. And she's talking to this girl on that boat and is like, oh, where are you from? And she's like, Villette. I think that's how they say it in the audiobook, Villette. And she's like, yeah, that's like where I'm from. And also there's like this Madame Beck who's looking for a governess or whatever. Just thought I would like casually drop that into conversation. And then Lucy's like, oh, that's cool. And then she decides to go to this random small town in France. And then is like, well, I guess I'll go try to find that madam. And while she's trying to do that, she doesn't speak very much French at all, so there's very much a language barrier there. And she's getting off, I think, the train. She's getting off a transportation of some kind, and they don't have her trunk. And she's trying to communicate with the conductor, like, oh, what happened in broken French. So this guy comes up, and he's an Englishman, and he's like translating between what the French dude is saying, and then translating it back to her in English and stuff. And he's like, oh, well, your trunk is on its way. It'll probably be here like tomorrow. So then this same Englishman decides to help her find her way to Madame Beck's house. And she comes into Madame Beck's house pretty much in the dead of night and demands a job. And Madame Beck is just Like, okay, I guess. Because what else are you gonna do? She gets taken in by Madame Beck, and she starts off with, I think, like kind of working in the nursery, and then proves herself to be able to be more of a governess status. And it seems kind of like a boarding school for girls, or the vibes that I'm getting here. And she does slowly start to learn French. She's still not like necessarily super fluent, but like she can definitely hold a conversation. And during that time, there is this one girl that keeps talking to her. Basically, she's just kind of like, yeah, like I have this guy that really likes me, but I think he's poor, so like I don't know if I'm gonna marry him. And she's like, okay, well that's kind of toxic. Maybe you shouldn't be leading him on. She's like, but I'm pretty and I want to. And so the guy that Fanshawe is talking about is actually the same guy who brought Lucy to Madame Beck that one late night. And his name is Dr. John, and he's basically the boarding school's on-call physician. But you also have this subplot going on while Lucy's at the boarding school, where you start having these love letters get dropped off at the boarding school, which is kind of scandalous for a boarding school of all girls who are unwed. And it turns out that these letters are actually going to Fanshawe, and Dr. John keeps showing up more often at the boarding school to grab these letters before they can get to Fanshawe. But we don't necessarily know who the person is that's sending the letters. So I did write down some notes of like some of my thoughts as I'm reading them. One thing is that the writing style kind of reminds me of Virginia Woolf, and I looked it up, and other scholars have noted that this is kind of, there's elements of stream of consciousness here. So it kind of goes back and forth between like inner dialogue and more of like stream of consciousness writing of like what's happening, which can make it kind of difficult to read, which is why, more reasons why I think it's really helpful for me to have the audiobook and the physical book at the same time. Because a lot of the times when I read Virginia Woolf, I'm going to be listening to the audio version. I think that her stories are best read out loud and not necessarily read like in your head, because it's easier to find the cadence and like understand the stream of consciousness a little bit better, I feel like. So kind of same thing applies for this book so far. I think there's a lot of also good analogies throughout the writing, and like one that I wrote down is that Lucy describes herself as a fly being caught in Madame's cobwebs of surveillance. Because the thing about Madame is that she's running a school with a bunch of girls. So, like, she's got to be on top of it. She needs spies. She needs to know what is happening. She cannot have a scandal on her hands. So, like, she has probably all kinds of different ways to find out what's happening in the school. So that's like an example of analogy that I really liked. And also, I said in the beginning that there tends to be a lot of French in this book, and I was correct. There's a lot of French in this book, and it's not generally translated for you. It's not like a French phrase and then the narrator comes in and is like, well, you know, he said this, that, and the other, but I don't really think that's true, or like whatever. Like there's no like explanation. You're supposed to know French. So I'm trying to use like my 3 years of elementary French to like get myself through this, and I definitely need to pause more often and look things up. I'm getting somewhere with the little bit of French that I still remember from school, but if you are someone who like knows some French or wants to test out their French skills from like past years or something, this would be a good book to do that with, because they really do not help you out, unless you probably get like another edition that might have some footnotes. But with this edition, you got to do some research. And then the other thing that I just find kind of amusing is that because it is so like English versus French, you also get like Protestant versus Catholic. And I find that really funny because like I've grown up Catholic. I'm still technically Catholic, but I'm actively trying to leave the Catholic Church and become one of the Protestant denominations. So I just think like the little beef there is kind of funny, and I'm sure it does have to do with like the historical moment between like the French and the English at this time whenever this is written. That's my update. I hope that my plot explanation kind of made sense. It's always a struggle for me every single time that I do them because I don't prepare. I'm about 2/3 of the way through, once that I read 2 more chapters, and Leo has been a menace, so we'll see what he does throughout this whole recording. But I did try to take down some notes. Can you please not shove your face in my armpit? Oh my gosh. Okay, so the last time that I tried to give a summary, I didn't give myself any kind of outline, but this time I decided to, since clearly I need to do that since I'd said many things incorrectly. But the last big thing that happens after we have the whole, like, who are sending these letters debacle is most of the school goes on holiday and Lucy is left to her own devices in like this big empty house, and she's totally alone, and she kind of slowly goes a little stir crazy and her mental health is not well. So during her kind of spiral, she decides to go to confession. And as we know, Lucy is an English woman, a Protestant. She doesn't do any of this Catholicism silliness. But she was like, I need to talk to another human being. And I know that a priest is going to be there. And this is a good shot. So let me just go in and talk to this dude. So she talks to the priest and she's like, he's a very kind man. Too bad he's Catholic. Okay, so then she's like, I'll just walk back home. But she's really not doing so well, and the priest does wind up like kind of following behind her, which sounds creepy, but his heart was in the right place, and also he was doing a good deed because she winds up actually passing out in the cold. And so then the priest goes and gets Dr. John, and we don't necessarily know this until later, but he gets Dr. John to take Lucy in, and Lucy wakes up in this room that she doesn't know, but all the furniture seems suspiciously familiar. She's like, I know these curtains, I know these chairs, but we're not in England, at least I don't think. And it turns out that this is the residence of her godmother, who is Mrs. Breton, I think that's it. And it turns out that Dr. John is actually Graham, which apparently Lucy was like, actually, I've known this for a couple months now, dear reader, but I decided to not reveal his true identity until it was really needed. And it was like, okay, girl, like, you didn't have to do that, but okay. Continuing on with the plot, though. Dr. John and Lucy start to, like, talk to a little bit more. They become more acquainted. At this point, Dr. John's kind of giving some kind of love interest vibe, especially since once that she goes back to school, then he starts writing letters and she gets really excited about the possibility of getting one of his letters. So it's kind of like, you know, when you're interested in a guy or a girl and you get a text message and you're like, oh my gosh, I hope it's them, and then you see that it's them and like your heart flutters or something. It kind of feels like that, but like 1850s version of that. So during her actual stay though with Dr. John, they wind up going to a couple of different social events, and one of them that they go to, they see his old love interest, Mrs. Fanshawe. He sees her and he's still like definitely interested in her, but then she kind of gives like a sly look to his mother and that rubs him the wrong way, and he's like, you know what, I see her for her true characters and her true color. I no longer am interested in this woman. The spell has been broken. I'm done. So he did say, like, to Lucy that obviously there was more to it than just the fact that she kind of dissed his mom, but that was like an icing on the cake and made him realize, you know what, maybe she's not a great person. So that love interest is pretty much gone now, but we'll see this again. So, like, just put a pin in that. So then the other big like social event that happens is they go to a play together, and then during the play someone runs out and is like, fire, fire, and you find this out later, but apparently there was a curtain that caught on fire, but then they got it out pretty quick, so no one was really in danger, but as far as they knew, they were in danger. So everyone starts running out of the theater, and then there's like this one girl that has a dislocated shoulder because everyone's running out, so then Dr. John and Lucy help her out of the theater, get her to her father, and her father's like, do you mind coming with us? Like, my carriage is right here. And they're like, sure, we'll come with you. with our carriage, like right behind you. So then they go, and Dr. John's able to kind of assess this woman a little bit more, and he's like, surgery isn't really my expertise, but like I think she'll be fine. And so then Lucy winds up like helping her undress with her chambermaids and stuff to make sure that they're attentive to the hurt shoulder. And then they go on their merry way. But that's another point that does become important later, because her godmother invites her to a residence, and Lucy goes, and then she's like, who is this other woman that's here, other than like obviously her godmother? And she's like, oh, that was the girl that was in the fire. And then she starts to look at her more, and she's like, wait, this is Polly. And it's like, okay, so now we have Graham, Polly, and Lucy all reunited as adults. And the main thing that does happen here is that Polly's still kind of into Graham, and Graham's starting to get a little into Polly. And so then you start having that love interest form a little bit more. I'm still very like fresh into that, so I don't know how far it's gonna go, but we're seeing some elements of that. However, the issue with this is Polly's cousin is Mrs. Fanshawe, who is like telling Polly, oh my gosh, me and Dr. John are in love, and like he's gonna propose to me any day now, which is like a flat out lie, but Polly doesn't know this. And so she's trying to like shrink back from Dr. John a lot and not letting her feelings show, and like trying not to talk too much to him. And for a while it's been kind of a mystery of like why she started doing that, but now we know why. And that was like the last thing that I've read, so I don't know how that's all gonna like pan out right now. But some of the other things that are notable that I couldn't really wrap into this summary is with Lucy back at school, she's kind of having another love interest moment with one of her colleagues, Paul Emanuel. And the thing with this is that I've totally missed this. I was like trying to like research a couple things, and then they mentioned this, and I was like, wait. Well, I mean, I guess, but the thing is that the whole time that like Paul has been in this narrative, I have been like, this is a gay man, but that's not that actually doesn't make sense for the 1850s now that I think about it. But like he just reads as a gay man to me, so I was like, is this like is this a gay bestie? Is this what's happening? But no, he's actually a love interest, because this is the 1850s, and like homosexuality does not exist. So like not really, but you know, the way that people view things. So he's actually a love interest, and I totally have missed that up until now. So I need to start actually seeing him maybe as a bisexual man. But no, I need to recognize that there's not going to be a gay man in this novel. And the other thing that is kind of like a weird subplot that I haven't really decided how I feel about is at the school there's like this legend of a nun, and Lucy's been seeing the nun, and like I think one of the first times was kind of in like her mental spiral due to not being around any other humans, but she's also like seen it a couple other times. And I will say at least the other two times that I can remember, they've always been around John's letters. Like first it was when she first got a letter from him, and she was eager to read it, and then she saw the nun and like ran away, and then the letter disappeared. But then John was like, oh, actually I had it all along, I just saw it on the floor and thought maybe I should pick this up, and gives it back to her. And then the next time is when she's deciding to bury his letters, and that feels symbolic, but it's still new, so I don't really know exactly what symbolism that's gonna bring. But she's burying his letters, and then she sees the nun again and tries to confront it each time. Well, this time she tries to. The other time she ran away, which is like understandable. And like it's just, I don't know, it's like this reoccurring motif that I'm like, is she seeing things? Is this symbolic? Are there spirits? Is this someone playing a prank? Like, I don't know. Since I talk so much about like all these different characters and how they intersect, I thought I would draw a little map with my iPad to help kind of visualize things, because like if I was listening to myself talk about like what this dude did and this dude thought about this one, I would totally get lost. So I'm gonna set the mic down. Okay, so we have our main character, Lucy Snow, and I'm just gonna do initials. Well, as we know, she is interested in Dr. John, who we're going to put as DJ, who is also Graham. and also apparently Paul Emmanuel, who is not a gay bestie. So here we have our little love triangle esque. You know, Dr. John is also kind of in a love triangle of sorts with Mrs. Fanshawe and Polly, and here we have this. And so even though he doesn't really like her anymore, Mrs. Fanshawe, she's telling Polly that they are in love. That's a horrible heart. That they are in love. So this is kind of affecting this. And also because Lucy, I think, is starting to realize that Polly still has feelings for Graham, Dr. John, from back in their youth. She's kind of cutting these ties a little bit, is the vibe that I'm getting, and starting to lean more a little bit into Paul over here, who is not a gay man. I need to keep saying that's gonna be his epithet. It would be like Paul, who is not a gay man. So yeah, so like that's basically a visual of like all of the plot that I try to explain. And yeah, so like that's just kind of where I am in the narrative. The other thing to note is that I did look up the whole like French versus English thing, and it seems like at the time that Charlotte Bronte would probably be writing this, the French and the English are in a moment of alliance and trying to support one another in a time of peace and stuff. So I wanted to give up a little update on that, but yeah, I got nothing else. That's all I have. Hello. So it is like the evening right now because I finished the book today. It's Sunday. And I was like, I'll probably like do a wrap up maybe later this week. But then I looked at my schedule and I'm like, I'm really not gonna have that much time later this week. And honestly, part of the reason why I was like, I'm just not having a great hair day. But you know, here we are anyways. And I did jot down a couple notes for myself, so I might be looking down a lot. But I did want to give kind of a wrap up of the plot. So where we left off was Lucy burying the letters that she and Dr. John exchanged. And at first I was like, I don't know what this means like symbolically. And I later on did see what it was. And basically it was kind of like Lucy burying her feelings a little bit, or at least maybe her hopes for the affection that Dr. John was giving her to eventually become something more than just friends, I believe. But she mostly buried them because Polly and Dr. John were continuing to evolve in their relationship, and both seemed to be really interested in each other. And I think Lucy was just kind of like, you know what, I think Polly's a wonderful person, and she's my friend, and I need to respect that he loves her, and she loves him, and I need to step out of this situation. And I'm like, that was kind of nice to see. That doesn't happen very often. That was a really girl's girl moment, I think. That allows Paul and Lucy to like really start to have a connection. Through that, Madame Beck is kind of watching and noticing, and so then she tells Lucy, I need you to go on a little errand and drop off this basket of fruit, I'm pretty sure is what it is. And she's like, don't just leave it at the door. Like, you have to give it to the person who it is being delivered to. And she was like, okay. So she did, and this is all like a setup so that way Madame Beck can reveal Paul's secret. And it's the fact that, one, he's like basically a benefactor to this old woman, and two, the nun is his past lover, and three, as a Jesuit, and also the fact that he is like really sad that his nun lady died, is like basically celibate, or at least like doesn't ever want to get married or something. So like all of these things combined, she finds all of this stuff out, and then she eventually like confronts Paul, and he's like, yeah, it's like pretty much all true. But they continue to at least be friends, but because of this, Lucy's kind of like, okay, well, clearly this romance that I thought was happening isn't gonna go anywhere, because like he's still in love with this dead chick, and also like he's like super Catholic, and I'm not willing to like be Catholic. Like I just want to be Protestant, and like even still today you can't marry in the Catholic Church and have someone not be Catholic. Like it has to be between two Catholics for it to be like seen as legitimate, like as the sacrament. So because of all of this, Paul's kind of like, I know that we've been kind of thinking about each other more than just friends, but I think we just need to be friends, but like really intimate friends. And he calls her like like we are like brother and sister. So like he was like basically friendshipping her. She got friend-zoned a lot in this book, because I'm pretty sure Dr. John did too, and I had to like look up the significance of someone being like, you are my sister, because I was like, wait, I'm so confused. This is like an 1800s thing, because like you guys are really giving lovers, and now you're like, you're my sister, and I'm like, hold on. But apparently it's like a way to friend zone someone, so that was helpful to learn. So she gets friend zoned. Paul just kind of starts giving her the cold shoulder for a while. Then we find out that he has kind of like an arranged marriage. She sees this girl and she's like, oh my gosh, she looks just like that girl in the painting of the nun. But it turns out that's actually like one of the relatives of this dead nun that was Paul's lover, that is now engaged to Paul. Part of the arrangement is that he's also having to like go, I'm pretty sure, to the West Indies, but I don't remember exactly, but he's having to go to the Americas and like help establish the what I assume would be a plantation or something to that sort, and like marry her and all of that. Then she makes it home, and then she sees like the nun in her bed, as in like the nun that they've been haunted by, and then she realizes who the nun actually was. And it turns, so basically like moral of that story is the fact that the nun wasn't like a weird like figment of imagination or a ghost. It was like legitimately a thing. And I'm not really gonna say like who the nun is or the backstory of it, just because I'm like, you know, I do a lot of spoilers here, but I kind of want people to have to research that on their own, because I think it's fun, and like that's it. I literally have no other reason. Paul goes on his trip, but before he leaves, he's like, I'm giving you this building so that you can establish your own school, because he knew that she was interested in doing that one day, and kind of saw that ambition, and he was like, I'm giving this to you, and I want you to do it in my absence, and when I return, then I don't know. It's kind of like, and just think about how I'm gonna return one day to this wonderful school that you've built, and it's like totally yours. So I actually thought that was kind of nice, and then it actually leaves you on an ambiguous note where you can either believe that Paul made it back, or that he died at sea alongside his wife, who, you know, of course, is not Lucy. So it's kind of up to your interpretation. I like to believe that he died at sea, mostly because I just kind of want Lucy to like become Madame Beck in a way. Like I want her to run her school and just enjoy life that way, and not necessarily like end up with a lover or anything like that. I mean, maybe like another lover down the road or something like that, but maybe not necessarily get married. Like I kind of like that idea. Like this 1850s woman is just like, girl bossing it to the top. Like I'm not really one for girl boss feminism, because there's a lot of problems there, but like just the notion of like her independence at a time where there wasn't that much, like I mean women couldn't even vote, is really aspirational, I think, and I like that interpretation. The other thing, just like overall with the book, is that there is so much of like Catholic versus Protestant, and like, will we ever find a middle ground, and all of this commentary. And like, you could totally write a whole essay about that. I'm not the one to do it because I didn't pay that much attention, but like, I can tell you that there is a lot there of like a lot of like social commentary just on that. And as we know, like, France and England was in an alliance at this point, and I think like the religious background had a really big impact on like how that alliance was going, and the struggles and the tensions, and like, can we find compromises? Because I mean, even historically, like before this, I mean, they had plenty of wars that were just Catholic versus Protestant at the end of the day. So it was really cool seeing like an author try to explore that in this novel. I didn't necessarily understand all of it just because like I'm not from this era, but I feel like it would have been really powerful if you were in the 1850s and reading this book and seeing this commentary, because there is so much about theology that's kind of like an undertone in this. So I just thought that was kind of neat. But like overall, the book, main thing is that when it comes to like a slow-paced book, it's super hit or miss for me. I'm really like someone who likes a medium pace, and even fast pace can sometimes be a hit or miss for me. So like, I'm a big like medium pace kind of person. And interestingly enough, like, all the Bronte sisters are gonna be slow paced. So we're really testing myself with this. And this one, I will say that the slow pacing did get to me. I found it really distracting just in the fact of like, there would be some scenes that I'm like, how are we still in this scene? Like, it's been chapters, I feel like. So it was kind of like, it wasn't exactly boredom at times, but it wasn't exactly interesting. It was somewhere in between those two things that made it kind of difficult to get through sometimes. But like, the general plot, I really enjoyed the general plot. I just kind of wish that it didn't have such a slow pacing, but like, that's how the book was designed. And also, there's a lot of like really nice flowery language, and there's a lot of good use of like, writing. There's a lot of good writing. I know it's really profound for me to say, but like, and I think that that's probably why the slow pace isn't as like agonizing as what it could have been. But because of that, I wouldn't say this is going to be like a new favorite for me. I gave it a 3.75 star. I kind of wanted to give it a 4 star, but I'm like, the pacing alone makes it that I can't do that. But I liked the overall storyline a lot, and I actually did wind up eventually tabbing it. I mean, I didn't do like as much as I have done for some of the Jane Austen books, but like, sometimes when there was just a line that I thought was kind of cool or interesting, I would just underline it. And I don't have a ton of them. Like, it's not, because I wasn't gonna do like every single time that I thought she had really good wordplay. It was just like when I felt like there was a sentence that like particularly resonated with me. Like, one of them, for example, is, life is still life, whatever it pangs our eyes and ears, and their use remains with us. Through the prospect of what pleases be wholly withdrawn, and the sound of what condolences be quite silent. I don't really have a lot to add on that. I'm just kind of like, I just thought that was a cool sentence. Just basically say, like, life has highs and lows, but make it sound better than just that. Yeah, I wish I had, like, a really profound way to end this. I really don't. It's just kind of like, yeah, I enjoyed it. Would I read it again? Maybe at some point. Again, the pacing struggle for me. A little bit of a struggle. But, I mean, I would recommend people read it. Like, again, especially if you're into French, because there's a lot of French that doesn't get translated, and you just gotta, like, hope for the best, or translate it yourself, obviously. I probably should like go back and read it at some point and actually like transcribe each time they say French and like write it down as like an annotate, like a little note to myself, because I'm sure I missed a lot of stuff with my not fluent French understanding of things, especially since I did a lot of audiobook stuff, and it's easier for me to translate things when it's written down rather than when I hear it. So I'm sure I missed quite a bit. So like, I would like to read it again one day, but probably like years from now. Like, I think I need to have a breather. That's Charlotte Bronte for you. That doesn't involve Jane Eyre. Well, at least Leo is helping us end this note, and I guess I'll just end it here and say that I'll see you guys in the summer, and Leo will do what he does.
Ooh, this can't be right, 'cause the sun's engaged to the sky. Best friends found a new guy. I'm only getting older. Never had a shoulder to cry on. Someone to call mine. Everybody's falling in love and I'm falling behind.
Ooh, that was too low.